Aiy-yu-kwee and this is my channel, The Midnight Librarian, and today I am going to be talking about Rebecca Roanhorse's Black Sun. I would like to thank Hear Our Voices and Saga Press for getting me an advanced reader's copy of this book. It's very much appreciated. Thank you so much. And before I get into the book itself, I do want to say that there is content warning for this book of suicide, mutilation, scarification, blood, death, drug use, and drinking. Yeah, just a heads up. Particularly first chapter of this book has drug use, scarification, and mutilation and suicide happening with a minor. So just be aware of your mental state before going into this book. So this book is an adult epic adventure, fantasy, science fiction inspired by pre-Columbian America. Most epic adventures I feel like are inspired by Western European cultures. Lately we have been getting more books outside of that realm, and if we can just keep that up so it becomes the norm, that would be great. This book in particular has 4 different perspectives as the winter solstice is coming to the land. The city of Tuva is getting ready to celebrate the winter solstice with their sun priests. However, on the winter solstice, there's going to be a solar eclipse, which the sun priest has said to bring an unbalance to the land. Meanwhile, in another part of the meridian is a disgraced teak captain named Zyla, who is taking off in her ship with some precious human cargo, who is described to her as being harmless. She is well aware that anyone described as harmless is often the villain. This book explores decadence of power within the midst of weighted history, a struggle of individuals bound in society. I'm trying to think of ways to describe this book without giving anything away. This is the second book I've read from Rebecca Roanhorse, and it's made me question everything that I thought I disliked in books. Particularly multi-perspectives. I didn't think I enjoyed them. I thought they were confusing, hard for me to follow. I also didn't want to follow certain perspectives as they weren't in a way that made me curious about those perspectives. I wanted to hear more from other perspectives. That was not the case with this book. Each perspective in here, I think we have 4, gives enough details, gives enough information, and leaves me satisfied enough that when we switch to a different perspective, I have no qualms with it. In fact, I'm just fine with it. Could I have stayed with the first perspective that I was reading about? Yeah, sure. Am I mad that we're in a different perspective? No. Also the fact that I didn't think I liked political anything in books. I always thought politics don't seem to interest me, don't typically interest me in books. We deal with enough politics in real life that it's never something that has interested me in books. However, this one was very curious in that I was interested to see where it was going, who was backing who, what alliances were made. I was all for it, so that was also interesting. And so I feel like I can't say I dislike anything about books. It's just that the way authors portray them, it really just depends. And one thing that I've noticed about her writing that I very much appreciate is that it keeps me curious. And the first book that I read from her was The Trail of Lightning, from the first book in the Sixth World series, and ultimately I didn't quite enjoy it. I just didn't. But by the end of the book, I was curious enough that I want the second book now. I want to finish. I want to continue on with this series. So that's one thing that Rebecca Warnhorse is able to do for me, is that she keeps me curious. And that's no different in this book. Not to say that I didn't like this book. I did very much appreciate and like this book. It kept me curious the whole time. I didn't feel like it was info dumpy at all. She gave me just the right information and like sprinkled in information as she went with these perspectives, with the land, with the history. It was all very entertaining and interesting, and was just enough. That's one thing too with epic adventures that I'm always worried about, that I feel like it's going to go over my head because it's so info dumpy. Tolkien. And that, like, I often think that I'm not smart enough for them because they're so information heavy that it's like oftentimes like I'm like, wait, why? What? That's not the case for here. I very much like this book in that it was easy to read. The information wasn't heavy. It was spread out throughout the whole book, that I feel like every chapter I read, I learned something new and reaffirmed information that was already given to me. And by the end of it, I have a clear enough picture of, or by like 3/4 of it, I had a clear enough picture of what was going on. At that point, everything else was just frosting on the cake. But I wasn't given so much information that I think that the next few books are going to be boring. In fact, I can't wait for them to come out now. The curse of having an arc. This book isn't even out yet, and I want the second book now. I'm hoping that it'll have information that I was kind of yearning for in here. I want to learn more about the clans. I want to know more about the history. I want to know more about the lands. I want to know more about the characters. Not to mention that it kind of ended on a cliffhanger, but it's that I didn't mind. It kind of had me have this like holy shit moment, because there are scenes in here that are quite I enjoyed this book. When I finished this book, I felt completely satisfied. One thing that threw me off the whole time was the lack of a map. Just because that's something I do have a hard time with. I am very much a visual learner. However, because this is an art copy, the map wasn't done in time to put in here. So I hear that the final copy has a map. It has 2 maps, which was awesome to explore. It not only had different elements as we went from different. Not only was the society different as we went from place to place on the continent, but so was the atmosphere, so was the environment. It has LGBTQIA plus rep. There are multiple non-binary characters in here. Zyla is I don't think it was ever said if she's pan or bi. Just the way we're represented in here, I feel like was very just casual, in that, yeah, these characters are non-binary. We are referring to them as they and zer. It's like XE. There were just certain aspects of this book that I thought were really very beautifully vivid. Descriptions, environments, characters. I would have to say this was probably a 4.5. It's not my favorite of all time, but it's definitely one of my top for the year. So yeah, like I also said, that there are maps that are hopefully going to be in the final copy. This cover is absolutely gorgeous. So there is no doubt in my mind that I will be getting a finished copy of this book, because this is just the arc and it's gorgeous. I don't know what else to say about this book. I can't wait for the second one to come out. I'm intrigued to hear what other people have to say. This book is out October 13th. If you have read it, I want to know your thoughts. Please comment below. No spoilers, as this is a non-spoilery review. Otherwise, I am on other social medias, Instagram, Goodreads, Twitter. Otherwise, I hope that you are in a good mental headspace to be able to enjoy your reading. And I'll see you next time. Chew.